Listen, Tom, I want to talk to you about the kind of autism side of things, because I've mentioned this before. My stepson, he's autistic, so seeing what you're doing to help, people that don't think they're capable of achieving big things, I think it's been brilliant. So, what was it like growing up with the autism and the Asperger's?
So I think I was diagnosed at kind of an early age. I mean, I think it was, I'm just going to say like 7, 8 years old. It was that kind of early. I mean, it was, as a kid, it was harder because my dad worked away a lot on the rig. So he was away maybe two months at a time. So it was really only my mum and then my brothers and sisters. And it was, like, I was going to shops and kind of like smashing everything, putting my hand and thinking it was normal behaviour, and then like my brother beside me would just be walking, beside my mum and dad, and people would kind of stare and be like, why is this kid doing this? And so I kind of kept, autism was kind of quiet, throughout my kind of early years, even in primary school. I mean, I got help out of school. It was a lot of, my bigger sister, she kind of became chairman of the like Asperger's around the Highlands. So I went to a lot of after school clubs and clubs for kids that had like additional needs that she ran. So that was a massive help because it kind of, I was just with kids that had the same problems as me and kind of knew how like what I was going through. And like I was kind of like the minor of people who had much worse than me, but yeah. And then in primary school, I mean, it was harder in primary school because I got no help. I mean, our primary school had about 150 people, so it was tiny. So I kind of had my group of friends who I was there from P1, primary 1 to primary 7. So it was just the same lot of people. I wasn't getting there was no new people coming into the school. I wasn't getting mixed up with groups. So it was always the same kind of group of people. And then I think it was primary 5, primary 6 is when I kind of started getting kind of really bad out of school. That was kind of when I was, like the heads down all the time, not talking to people, like out with my friends and family, just different behaviours that people were like started saying, like, why is Tom doing this? Why is Tom doing that, etc. And then the hardest was primary. So from my school, we did like a 2-week transition week to academy, and that was when everything kind of started hitting home. That's when I kind of knew what like autism and stuff was. I was old enough to know, kind of like I was still had my head down, and everything. But that was because I was going from a school from like 100 pupils to 600-700 pupils, and it was all like 4 or 5 primary schools, coming in.
Yeah.
And that was then the kind of time I kind of was like, whoa, this is too much for me. So, but it was my mum and my sister were like, I mean, I had like a lot of work outside of school, so they kind of helped me as much as I could. I mean, I couldn't sleep over at my friend's house till I was about 13, 14 years old. I used to try and go to sleepovers. That was one of the hardest things. I used to try and go to sleepovers at a mate's, and by midnight I would be like, oh, I want to go home to my mum. So it's that. And again, they would be like, you're 14 years old, why do you want to go home to your mum? So again, that trying to keep that a secret.
We've had that, with Lewis. He's just turned 11, and he's going to secondary school, obviously in September, and he's the same. And it's just, there's certain situations where it's quite clear that, I guess, still a little bit childish. It takes a bit longer to understand. I mean, he's a really smart kid, really, really clever kid. But it's just certain situations where you notice it, and he does these funny things where he'll be sat around the table and he'll just go, ah! Just make these kind of funny noises. But we're just used to it. But to someone that, and we've always like brought him up to be respectful, and he's not treated any different to the other kids. But there's just certain situations you can't force them to stop doing these things, can you?
That's why you don't want to treat them differently, because then they'll ask you, why are you treating me like this, and someone else like this. But I mean, as I said, school was kind of, for me, felt the most normal because I was just with the same people that were all routine. But then when I was going, like I said, sleepovers, or if I was going an hour away from home, I would just panic and be like, I need to go. I actually was probably in S2 in the secondary school until I first went on a bus and trained myself, and that's, like you said, with the maturing. I wasn't as mature as my other friends. I was still like, I stepping on a bus. I should be doing that at like 12, 13, like 11 years old, you know, but it was just, that's how I kind of, you know, did things in my head. And anyway, into the academy was really hard because none of them had the support that like I needed. You know, they were still kind of, no one was really clued up here.
It's a lot better now, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
I think now there's a lot more help available.
Yeah, it's miles better now than it was when I was leaving school. That's when it was getting good. But like when I went into the academy, they just, you know, they just threw me into with the classes and just like, you know, kind of get on with it. And like teachers didn't know why you acting like this, why you got your head down, why, you know, you're doing all your like signs and stuff. I was just panicking big time. So I kind of dropped out of school from like S2 till S3, and I think like for a year I was just going into school gradually, you know, doing 2 or 3 sessions a week, and it was more PE. I mean, people with additional needs always have that thing they excel in. You know, like there's a really thing that they're really good at, and there's a thing that they kind of lack behind a lot of others. You know, so I was excelling at physical education. I mean, anything with a ball, like if it was cricket, rugby, anything, I could. Like I was above anyone else, but then maths, I was like, oh, gee, I couldn't even like add up. So that was kind of like people were wondering why I was so severe and like so good at one thing, so bad at others. So it was more until, so I went then, I was getting like then they started adding like additional needs support, like people. So I was getting support in classes, and it was, I think it was when I was 14, I kind of just said to the teacher, like, I want to tell my friends and the school that I've got, you know, additional needs. And I did that. And see, when I did that, then the relief off my shoulders, it was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Because in my head, I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm different. They're going to betray me. They're, you know, all these things I've done, they're just going to think, oh, you. But since I said that, they understood, you know, that's why I left class. That's why, you know, didn't do this, didn't do that. And that was probably the best.
The thing is, if they're proper friends, they're gonna support you and help, aren't they?
Even the whole school, I mean, that was the best kind of day in school. Like at my football club, everybody understood, you know, why I had my head down. So the support from that day was just amazing. They just treated me as a normal person, and that's what I'd just done. So they just left it at that. And then the teachers started kind of believing like in me, and kind of knew kind of how to work with my problems as well. But and even that transition from that day to like, I found it easier going from the academy to college because I had that extra support then. And then as soon as I left, I think 15, 16 turning, and that was when I kind of had to go into the big bad world, you know. And like a lot of people said to me, like, I wouldn't get married, I wouldn't get a job, and I wouldn't like succeed in like life. And that's kind of stuck with me because that's what I wanted to kind of do. Was, I mean, I think the second person in my family to get married and move out. And then, well, I was like, I got a job at like 17 years old, and then now I'm a professional strongman. So it was kind of it escalated quickly, but it was like worth it, you know. So
you've done amazingly well.